Welcome. My name is Susan Brown Morgan. I am here to present something that I've worked with this year called 7th grade social studies. It is a blended classroom of co-teaching, and it is a challenge. It is in a high poverty area of 75% poverty, and I am with a younger teacher, a first-year teacher, and I have created what I feel would be a little bit more enabling coursework and involve a little bit more strategies to reach all the visual, audio, and verbal learners, as well as those that need tactile and various sensory integrations. So I look forward to sharing my 1 week of learning. This is the course map. You can see some of our school as well as our key guidelines that we follow at the middle school: to be respectful, responsible, be safe. We follow the CHAMPS module with voice levels of 0 to 5. Generally in the classroom it should be at a 0, which is no voice, a 1, which is a whisper, a 2, which is a sharing. And I do ask all students to be patient with both me and others. Learning rituals: I believe in course organizers, unit organizers, character cards, and teams from the Kagan learning styles. Compare and contrast diagrams. I do believe students do need to know how to take notes for tests. We use Chromebooks, group discussions. I believe in frames. I don't have one on this particular slideshow, but to help dissect the material is always very helpful for the visual learners. And you will also be seeing some of the concept diagrams. Critical concepts that we use to cover the history this past fall semester was credible sources, historical dates. They use smart songs, timelines, especially memorizing of dates, compare and contrast modules. Students are taught about how people in the past had to learn about responsibilities and choices and overall relationships between people, time, places, ideas, and diversity throughout past history. Over this course, through the course of the class, we covered permanency, exploration, farmers and cowboys, and how they compared and contrasted. Famous people: I like the character cards from Kagan Learning. The Depression we begin to start with in this particular week-long lesson. We'll cover some of the presidents, political movements, segregation, and war eras as well during this course of Kansas and social studies history. I really like this handout that we received during this particular course of 841. I like the course organizer because it allows the students to kind of track their progress, and anytime that they can have feedback about each day that they participate in the class or have learned something, they better understand their progress. The course questions are listed on here. These questions can be applied to all topics, whether we're talking about a certain war area or Brown versus Board of Ed or key individuals or Kansas history makers. We generally use timelines, as I mentioned. We talk about famous people, societal changes. These are just some of the things I reiterated on the overall course outline. The best techniques we use to share and teach with are compare and contrast. We use photos, lots of photos, newspapers, a lot of videos, political cartoons, textbooks, diagrams, and he likes a Twitter wall. I personally want to do a stop sign wall where at the top they share what they really enjoyed about that particular day's lesson on their way out. I like the caution, which is, yeah, I really get this. I want to know more about it. And then the red light that basically says, I definitely need more information on this. This was not clear to me. It's just something I want to develop in the future. You'll see that the values corresponds with how they learn, so they really need to share. What I've done is taken this particular unit that we're going to cover this week. I've broken it down just into 5 days of instruction. You can see the topics that we're going to talk about over the next 4 or 5 days were included with the timeline. On day 1, Depression and Dust Bowl. Day 2, FDR and the Big Deals. Day 3, Famous Progressive Kansans. Day 4, and then the talk of desegregation. Now, cramming this all into a 1-week lesson is going to be a task, and it probably will need to be tweaked a lot, but that won't happen tonight. The unit relationships will utilize compare and contrast, who led civil movements, key characters, and why was change needed or not needed. These are things I want them thinking about. Okay, this is a very detailed lesson plan. I did my best to get it on here. You'll notice that each day has an objective, a starter, the last 10 minutes, an activity, best way for them to assess things. Usually this is in a physical motion, either using some group strategies, peer review, shoulder-to-shoulder discussion. Modifications are including peer collaboration, written feedback. Students can write for other students as long as they're sharing. They're sharing verbally, orally, and written materials. Students can also allow movement with knowledge as they move from table to table. Groups may send or share video clips, or they may turn in written outlines of information for their projects. So there's different ways that they can present their information to us for credit. Lessons for 1 week in Kansas history. I've clearly gone over these, and you are free to review them. These are the key dates that we'll be focusing on this week. Stock market crashes, so we have a lot of people with no money. The banks lose out on all their money. People that had their money in the banks don't get their money out. And we talk about this big Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, the New Deals with FDR, Brown versus Board of Ed, and some other events that might also occur later in history. The Dust Bowl resulted from a number of things: drought, overplowing, and overgrazing. Students can study this online, particularly in Kansas, but the idea here through my lecture will be to compare and contrast what happened before the Dust Bowl and how we implemented conservation to end these agricultural problems. As you can tell, the government encouraged farmers to utilize terraces, such as this one. Contour farming, such as this, you'll see the levels, so that when the wind blows, things just don't blow away. As well as crop rotation. 1 year you plant one crop, another year you plant another crop, and that way different nutrients end up in the ground. One of the things that happened after the Dust Bowl is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was really known as FDR, came up with the idea of the New Deal. It was programs to help unemployed find jobs and make money to make the economy better so people could make money and buy things and work as a family. A number of these organizations are still in place. I do have a handout on these. I will not cover it in my PowerPoint or my presentation. But it is important that this did help reduce unemployment, and it got money moving into the economy to increase natural resources. At this point, we begin to talk about some of the other famous Kansans. Amelia Earhart, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. If you'll notice on the lesson plans during their opening statements, bell work, so to speak, they are allowed to Google on their Chromebooks detailed information about these people and add it for their daily bell work. After lecturing over a number, probably 4, 5, 6, 7 famous Kansans, what we did was we divided the groups into 5 teams, and I've listed an example of how I posted it around the room. For instance, we had 5 round tables in the room, and we have about 3 people at each table for a total of 15 kids. So each team had 3 on it. What I did was put a big sheet of paper at each table, and I put the name of a person that that we had discussed, or that I had lectured and presented on, or that maybe they have researched, and we put that one name on each table on each piece of paper, and each team then had 30 seconds to go from table to table to write down everything that they as a group knew about that person without repeating what the team before them had done. And with that, each team was given one colored pencil marker. And for instance, we had a blue team, an orange team, a red team, and a gold team. And they went around and added their comments. Then the team with the most comments and that knew the most about all these characters that we had been studying of history then won the prize. The fun thing about studying history is all the wonderful characters who made a change in history and socialization, and then bringing that to the students' attention as to how that person might have been like them, or what they learned from them, or why they liked them, or how they can compare it or contrast it to a situation in their own life. And in each of these, they had to list 3 things or fill in the blank. And what I do is I give the students each choose one card to share with their shoulder partner. These cards are cut up, and for instance, if I had card 1 and my partner had card 2, and I then had, and the topic for that moment was to discuss Dwight D. Eisenhower. Who was Dwight D. Eisenhower, and what did he or she do make you like or dislike him or her? I liked him because he seemed to be generally liked by the general public. And then I'd give a few examples, and then my partner would go, and we'd switch after 30 seconds. And then we might even add different topics of the characters for them to discuss with their shoulder partner or table partner. Day 5, we began learning about the Brown versus Board of Education and the Supreme Court case that overturned the court ruling of separate but equal, Plessy versus Ferguson, and then later that everything would be desegregated through the Brown versus Board of Education civil rights milestones and movements, period. At this point, I would like to embed a link to some information that might be helpful, or an easy link that somebody could connect. I will make this attempt to make a link to a documentary. I'm not sure if it'll work tonight, but I'll give it my best shot.
The following is an MSNBC special presentation.
1950s Farmville. The racial population was split evenly. Blacks and whites did not live side by side, but back to back. Life drew them together. The law kept them separate. It had been that way for as long as anyone could remember.
All of the facilities were very clearly marked, colored white. The movie theater right across the street was a segregated movie theater. Blacks were allowed to come in, but you had to use the side door. If we were coming downtown, we were made to go to the bathroom before we left the house, so we wouldn't have to suffer the humiliation of using separate restrooms when we went out.
I grew up in a period as a child when you went to a doctor's office and there was a white entrance and a black entrance, and there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's just the way it was.
I have lived next to a Negro family practically all my life. We never had a cross word.
Negress, that was the word that they used in Farmville. It sticks in my mind. I could never forget negress.
Race relations were fine as far as I was concerned. Frankly, it was two worlds. They socialized in their world, we socialized in ours.
And it started with the children. By law, education in Virginia was completely segregated. But what could be done? Students of Moton High School would soon follow Barbara Johns. They would take the plunge of their lives against the tide of segregation. By 1959, time had run out for the segregationists in Prince Edward County. The Federal Court of Appeals had issued a final order. They must obey. But in a stunning act of defiance, rather than integrate, the county shut down all its public schools. That September, no one went to public school in Prince Edward County. Not black, not white.
The year was 59 when the schools were closed in Prince Edward County, and I was 8 years old, about 8 years old at that time.
You know, you just drive by, here's this big building. It's supposed to be a school, and no kids. It's nothing there.
As I went back and looked at some of the course information that we had covered this past semester, I found a slide that I don't even think we spent much time on, but that I find quite phenomenal. On the right, you'll find the Keith Plessy, Plessy versus Ferguson, the man that refused to get off the white train because he was 1/5 black. And on the left, you'll see Judge Ferguson's great-great-granddaughter. And together they have created the Plessy and Ferguson Foundation for a Civil Rights Education Organization, period. I think that this is an important thing to understand, that we as a society have evolved, we have changed, and we will continue to see change and evolution in the future. This is something I would like our young people to embrace and to look forward to gaining an education so that they may cope and embrace all the opportunities ahead of them. Whenever we watch a movie, and usually depending on the length of the course or the class, I believe that they need to understand that they have to write a few paragraphs about each of the segments that we watch in the movie, and it just has to be, for each number, there needs to be a few statements, not anything lengthy, just a thought process that they turn in at the end of the hour to show me that they were engaged in the movie. And then this helps them put together maybe a final project. As with any indirect project or subjective subject matter, I think it's important that we provide the rubrics. This is one I created and put some time into a couple years ago. I hand this out so that they know that each day when they turn in that one-page review of 3 sentences over 4 questions about the movie they watched that day, that they do need to answer some details. They need to use examples. They need to be specific. They can't be flaky in their answers, and they need to be cautious with their grammar and mistakes. Thank you for listening to my presentation tonight. It is late, and I now need to connect it to my website. I've had a lot of fun doing the technology, although I've missed out on a lot of good time with my family. I think in the end it will be well worth the learning opportunity as I expand my repertoire for teaching, and I really thank the University of Kansas for the opportunity to do so. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and do email me if you have any questions. I can be reached at smorgan.newtonks@gmail.com. Take care and have a wonderful week.